Hey, Jules Blessed Vegan, and as always, welcome to my channel. And for those of you who are new, I know you can benefit. So yesterday I gave an introduction to the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book, and in particular, just an overview of my experience with the 12-step program. Alcoholics Anonymous, Codependents Anonymous, certainly Overeaters Anonymous. And I was just saying that the 12 steps have been a terrific blessing in my life, but that as I often do when I get a little comfortable, it was a tool that I let go of. And I was sorry for that. And I realized that part of letting go of it was that I was feeling shame-based. And I referenced that as part of my new experience of being a vegan. And I am by no means blaming anyone for my insecurity. I'm not blaming any program for my insecurity. It was just something that I was noticing in kind of maybe an unspoken philosophy that people are supposed to innately rely on all that they already possess within. And I very much believe that there are tremendous resources outside of ourselves, and I am happy to engage in them. So anyway, one of them is the 12 steps, and all of the 12-step programs are based on the original Alcoholics Anonymous from 1939. And then people just fill in the blanks. Instead of alcohol, they put food or gambling or drugs and so on. So this is the general overview of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'll include it in the description of this video. But it says Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. And again, they just fill in, food addict instead of alcohol, codependent instead of alcohol. But it's the same premise, that people are sharing their experience, strength, and hope, and that in doing so, others are drawn to the recovery. The second one is the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop whatever the addiction is. Of course, this says stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. That's true for any of the 12-step programs. And if someone dares to suggest that there are, it's not a valid 12-step program, and I would leave as quickly as possible. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. So again, they don't reach to outsiders to get money. It's only from the grace of each individual giving as much as they can. And when they don't have any, they're still welcome. And I am so grateful for that. And then it clarifies that AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy. Neither endorses nor opposes any causes. And again, that's really important too. If you're with a group that for some reason is starting to have opinion on things, that is not the AA philosophy at all. And finally, it says our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And so the same thing, it's to remain abstinent from binging and to help other compulsive overeaters achieve sobriety, to stay abstinent from codependency and to help other codependents achieve freedom, basically. Okay, so let me just read it in its entirety. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Okay, so I want to talk about the first step of the 12 steps, which essentially is where the journey begins. And of course, I also will include this in the description of the video. So it says the first step of anything is a beginning. So the first step of Alcoholics Anonymous 12 steps is the beginning of your recovery process. It's actually really exciting because it's the first day of a whole new life. This is where the healing starts. Doing the 12 steps is referred to as working the steps because it requires willingness, effort, and action. It is said that the 12 steps of AA is compared to markers put out lovingly on a path by those who preceded us to direct us on our journey. The journey can seem daunting from the perspective of a person at the beginning, but fortunately, all we are asked to do is to take one step at a time. And this is step 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. So again, powerless over food, whatever it is that is a struggle for you. And that's where people begin to argue that, you have to be stronger than that. You have to rely on yourself. Are you really going to admit defeat, etc., etc.? But I think if people could be their perfect ideal self, they would be. And if they're not that, then they're obviously falling short and struggling. And people who have already been through it are the best resource ever. And when it's completely free, even better. So this goes on to say, if lucky, our journey has taken us to arriving at a point of surrender. For some people, the road they traveled getting to the first step in AA has been more than enough to convince them that unconditional surrender is the only option for recovery. For a lot of people in recovery, walking into a treatment center or an AA meeting the first time is a major part of working step 1. Your simple and humble act of asking for help is effectively an admission of powerlessness and unmanageability. Hi, human, right? Perfectly imperfect. Most addicts are filled with guilt. I so get this. They're filled with guilt, shame, remorse, and self-loathing when they come into the rooms of AA. And again, please know that this is OA. This is GA, Gamblers Anonymous. This is all of them. Codependence Anonymous, whatever it is. And Codependence Anonymous is also referred to as CODA. But anyway, most people have already been so shamed. It was certainly my situation. Wanting to be perfect, falling short of that, feeling guilty about it. So opening up about the nature and extent of your alcoholic behavior is going against the grain. Admitting that you vomit every night, admitting that you starve yourself to death, goes against what society is saying as a perfect person you should do. It may even feel completely unnatural and you probably don't want to do it. But sharing your experience and the unmanageability lifts the burden of lugging them around in secret. Letting go of your secrets frees you up to move forward with a different, better life. For many people, the act of sharing step 1 in an AA meeting is the true start of recovery. It was really hard for me to say, hi, I'm Juliana, a compulsive overeater. I knew it to be true, but I'd never said it out loud. It is humbling. However, becoming abstinent from, and this says alcohol, but again, I hope that's not a struggle for you. I'm going to go back and forth by saying food and alcohol because my main thing is compulsive overeating. And praise God, I do not participate in any kind of drinking anymore. And it doesn't haunt me in my sleep the way a fast food restaurant does. So becoming abstinent from food will also be compulsive overeating, will also be a requirement for starting to work the first step. The first step is all about looking at the effects of excessive food in your life and for what is needed to be clean, to find a way to stop the behaviors with a perspective that isn't clouded by compulsively overeating. If you've been clean for a while, then the first step is about powerlessness over behaviors that make your life unmanageable. And I remember faltering so many times, which I certainly continue to do, but luckily more often I tend to be well. But there was a huge struggle in being able to say that I have trouble with just food. What was interesting, though, in Overeaters Anonymous, it's not just compulsive overeaters who have weight to lose. It is bulimics. It is bulimia-orexia, so those who use exercise to try and get well. It is absolutely people who are vomiting, like anyone who struggles with anything about food, and it certainly makes their life unmanageable. So step 1 is doing the work. There are a lot of things that compulsive overeaters can do to fully work step one. Most of the work is designed to unearth your complete history of use and abuse. Inventories are a great way to work the steps, even starting with step one, because later in step 4 and 5, it'll actually give you an inventory to take. But this is for just step one to get people on. So you can make a couple of lists, and one is a consequence list. The easiest way to break through the fog of addiction is to create a list of consequences as a result of that behavior. I have consequences. I've had bills that weren't paid. I've had relationships broken over lying. As I suggested, just at 13 years old, I was fired from babysitting because I was eating the people out of house and home. I have definitely had consequences. The second list could be a powerlessness list. Go for as many examples of your powerlessness over your addictive behavior as possible. Be as fearlessly honest as you can, starting with early examples and ending with the most recent. So a note on powerlessness that is used to exemplify the cravings in a food addict or any addict that are so intense that the ability to resist is almost impossible. Once a compulsive overeater takes that first compulsive bite, once an alcoholic takes that first drink, once a gambler gambles that first bid, right? There's a chemical reaction that occurs within the body that sets off an intense craving for more. It might be the dopamine that gets you so excited you've got to have more. I so get that. Like right now, I totally have a hangover. From food. I chose to eat incorrectly the last couple of days. I have a severe headache. I'm trying not to take migraine medication for it. I'm just trying to drink fluids and get through it. My face has been on fire today. I've been a wreck. But I was like, show up anyway. You've got to show up anyway. That's when you go to that meeting anyway. As I suggested, it is often encouraged that people do 90 meetings in 90 days when they're first trying to even break any addiction or any behavior. And luckily, because they have meetings every 3 hours around the clock all over the world, people can get those 90 meetings in. And if you're up at like 3 in the morning and you're like trying so hard not to read your fridge, you can find a meeting online at 3 in the morning. It's pretty fantastic. Okay, and another list is an unmanageability list. Write out the ways in which your addiction has created chaos and destruction in your life. So let's look at those 3 lists again. 1, consequences. What are the consequences because of that addiction that you've been acting on? Powerlessness. How do you feel completely powerless whenever those cravings and desires take over? And unmanageability. In what ways has your life been ruined as a result of those behaviors? Oh, man. All right. Here are some other really great questions to ask yourself. You can write these down, or as I suggested, this is going to be in the description of the video. And this is by a guy named Jason Waller. And he's just somebody who promotes the 12 steps and has a program to help people. And this is his outline for this. And I will share it. So here are some other really great questions to ask yourself while doing step 1. 1, what does the disease of addiction mean to me? What does it even mean? Number 2, how has my disease affected me physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and financially? So important. I have absolutely wreaked havoc on this body so many times over the years, literally losing and gaining over 100 pounds in my adult life, and far more besides that. Mentally, being so incredibly cruel to myself, emotionally, hiding, skipping so many events because I was so ashamed, lying about why I couldn't go when it was just poor body image, just anger at myself, financially, spending down to my last penny, taking money that wasn't mine, taking food that wasn't mine, like so many ways. Okay, and this will help a lot when you get to step 4, when it asks you to take a fearless moral inventory of yourself. Number 3, how does the self-centered part of my disease affect my life and the life of those around me? Some people don't even know how incredibly self-centered I can be when I'm in my disease. I went to confession this morning at Mass and told God for the umpteenth time that I was so sorry that so many of my actions around food result in so many secondary sins that I accidentally fall prey to, such as lying, such as uncontrolled anger. There's just so many things that getting into the food bring up for me. Number 4, have I blamed other people for my behavior? Well, they made me eat because I was so, felt so bad around them. Whatever. They were offering me food so many times I finally had to eat. Have you blamed other people for that behavior? Have I compared my addiction with other people's addictions? Have I compared my addiction with other people's addictions? Well, mine's not as bad as theirs. I mean, look, they're 560 pounds. I'm only, 418. Well, mine's not as bad because they get up in the middle of the night to do it, and I finish eating by 11 o'clock. Come on. So what's going on with that? What does unmanageability even mean to me? What does that look like? What troubles have been caused because of my addiction? Again, losing relationships, hurting other people, abusing circumstances, lying my fool head off. Have I used alcohol or drugs? Again, you can replace that with food, sex addiction, whatever. Have I used alcohol or drugs to change or suppress my feelings? Only a billion trillion times, okay? What reservations am I still holding on to about getting well? What are the things that supposedly this way of life is serving me as opposed to clean wellness? Do I accept that I'll never regain control over whatever that is, even after a long period without use? Yeah. Tanny Ron, I've mentioned her many times, and she's a social media phenom in the raw vegan community, the vegan community, the health community in general. And she lost 88 pounds, at least 88 pounds. And one thing that she is acutely aware of and says all the time is that the behaviors that got her to that sick place to begin with, that if she dares to resume them, she will certainly be back there again and probably worse. Like, she reminds herself of that all the time. So are there certain foods that are triggers for you that you know that when you give into them, it's no holds bar, like everything is on the table? That happens to me when I have cooked food. That happens to me when I have breads and pastas. Like, it just makes me crazy. It makes me want everything else. Like, I know that now. There's certain foods that certainly affect my migraines, that exacerbate my asthma. Like, I have an awareness of all of those. If I don't want those things to reoccur, then I cannot participate in certain foods. They are triggers for me. So do I accept that I can never again regain control over that blank, over that alcohol, over that addiction, over that food, over the sex addiction, over the gambling, over the whatever it is, that it's not something you can toy with? What could my life be like if I really surrendered completely? Wow, these are so worth looking at, and I'm going to take some time with them. If I really did surrender and just choose complete wellness, God, I love the idea of that. I've been there, but only for days at a time. But what it does is it makes all of my life better. Not only does it give me energy and a sense of freedom in my body, but as I suggested, it eliminates all the secondary things that come with abusing food. So the need to lie, the need to hide, the self-hatred, the infinite amount of put-downs, the shame I feel, the arguments I have with God. I mean, like, throwing myself to the curb, like, all of those things are omitted when I'm just honoring my body by only eating to live rather than living to eat. Today was a good day. I was so dang sick. I really just needed to pull myself together, and I started with, my celery juice. I took a half hour. I followed it with lemon juice. I took a half hour. I drank water until 1 o'clock, and finally had my first meal, which was bananas and romaine with some cinnamon and chia, and that's comfortable for me, and I had that. And then I went ahead and had some tea because I was having such a bad headache and feeling so sick. And I had like 6 cups of tea, right? 2 24-ounce cups of tea. And I enjoyed that. And then when it was time for dinner, I made a huge salad. I had an entire thing of, like, I had to get a pre-bagged thing of, I can't even think, sorry. But I want to think, and I'm pushing through for it. That's all the fog that comes with getting into the nonsense of eating wrong. Anyway, I had a pre-made bag of plain coleslaw. So it was literally, I'm trying to think how much, 14 ounces, so just shy of a pound of coleslaw and shredded carrot. Sometimes I buy it in a bag if I have to. So I had that 14 ounces, and then I had 8 ounces of power grains. And I just shredded and cut down all of that. And then I had like 15 cherry tomatoes, half of a large cucumber, a half of a bell pepper, green bell pepper. And then I made an amazing dressing. And the dressing was an, is it called aju or anju? Anyway, one of those green pears, so a full-size green pear. And then half of a, this is what happens to me. When I'm in pain, I can't think straight, but I want to. Anyway, half of a large zucchini. And then I added a 4th cup of apple cider vinegar and some wakame. And I actually soaked 2 tablespoons of shredded almonds, and I put those in there. And then I added a bunch of spices. I blended the whole thing. It was amazing, thick, delicious. I put a picture of it to, affirm myself, and I ate that, and I enjoyed every bit of it. And then the kitchen was closed. So that was a really good day. I felt satiated. I never felt sick from my food. I was happy that I had honored my body. I didn't have any shame in that food. Like, all of that food was on my plan. And when I live like that, I am free. I am free. All right, so then it says, what can my life be like if I surrendered completely? Am I willing to follow a sponsor's direction? I'm in the 12-step program. People volunteer to be sponsors. It's completely free. They have their story to tell. They know giving service keeps them strong. They have food sponsors. They have step sponsors. They're different sponsors. Some people might have 3 sponsors. 3 civilians who are saying, I want to do service because service keeps me clean. And so some people have a sponsor who guides them with the food. And in the 12-step program, there is no requirement of any diet. People find their own way, which was really hard for me in the beginning because I was like, wait, you're not going to hand me a diet? How am I supposed to do this? I've only done diets my whole life. And they were like, no, you will find your way. They do have one thing. It's called the gray sheet, which is a long, long time ago. And I will mention that in tomorrow's talk because I'm going to continue with step 1. But anyway, you find your own way, and everybody has their own plan because they recognize that everybody is unique. But it says, am I willing to follow a sponsor's direction, go to meetings regularly, and give recovery my best effort? This is all back in step 1, because if you're not even willing to do any of that, there's a chance that you are not ready to get well yet. Maybe you're not sick enough yet. And then finally, have I made peace with the fact that I am a blank and that I'll have to do things to stay clean? That I'm an alcoholic and I'll have to do things to stay clean, that I'm a drug addict, I have to do things to stay clean, that I'm a compulsive overeater, I have to do things to stay clean, that I'm a codependent. Like, am I there? So it says, this is for responsibility. For each and every one of the millions of success stories in AA, you will hear repeatedly about responsibility. It is our responsibility to stay involved in sobriety and abstinence, whatever, and follow our sponsor's suggestions. It is our responsibility to actively cultivate and grow willingness. It is important to grasp that you are not powerless completely. You do have the power to engage in a program of recovery, the power to choose not to abuse substances, but you are powerless over drugs and alcohol if you put them in your body. So I tend to be powerless once I give in to certain foods that provoke me, because by then my body is raging with cravings and it is calling me in the night, and it just becomes insane for me. Luckily, as I suggested, I've abstained from alcohol for 28 years, so that's fine. Acceptance comes when we feel a profound sense of hope and peace in coming to terms with our addiction and recovery. We don't dread a future of meeting, attendance, sponsor, contact, step, work. Instead, we begin to see recovery as a precious gift. It has been my experience that doing the steps has brought me serenity and the welcome realization that AA is not just a program where sick people get well. It's a way of living that's rewarding in and of itself, and I know that to be true. And serenity is such an awesome gift, and I have an entire video on serenity. I'm going to connect it to this as well. Lots of people find that once they do step 1, that all manner of help appears. So once you even begin to surrender, suddenly everywhere you look is an opportunity. Like I was showing you last night with all of those books that I have, that's all part of the 12 steps. For some of you, you've never even heard of the 12 steps, let alone all the resources I just mentioned. Like all of a sudden you tune your ear a little differently and start hearing people's testimonies. You start hearing jargon in the language of the 12-step programs, and you're like, that person must be a 12-stepper. I mean, they're anonymous, but they can't help but talk in a way that you'll recognize. So I feel grateful to have a program that expands as I grow. Having a firm foundation in recovery through steps has also given me a welcoming fellowship to accompany me on my journey. Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. All right, so let's go back a second. 3 things that are recommended in here is the consequence list, powerlessness list, and unmanageability list. And then there are several questions. Is it coincidentally 12? Let me see. 6, 12. Actually, I think it's 13. But anyway, of all those questions you can ask yourself about where are you at? Where are you at? And this is step 1, the journey begins, breaking down the step 1 of Alcoholics Anonymous. All right, if you like, join us if you haven't. I am going to be staying with this for a while. I am doing part 2 of step 1 tomorrow because I have some other insights I want to give. But I'm going to honor myself right now, since I am doing insane pain and just trying to be brave and saying, I welcome all of this pain. I welcome this reminder once again on my journey that if I do certain actions, they do not serve me. And I am happy to be back at step 1 with you guys, because in the 12 steps, especially when you live it for a lifetime, you go through steps 1 through 12 all the time. And even though there's an inventory, and step 10 is literally taking a personal inventory every day, people rework the 4th step and the 5th step several times in their life, depending on where they're at. And so I have been through these steps many times, and I'm happy to approach them again. All right, until we talk again, know that I pray for you, and best of all, know that you're blessed.